The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Portland, Oregon, as if the sky itself was furious. Jasper Klein, soaked to the bone, stood under a flickering street lamp, clutching a dead phone and a heart full of dread. He was 28, a graphic designer with a knack for overthinking, and tonight he was stranded, until his boss, Evan Caldwell, pulled up in a sleek black car and changed everything. Jasper had always admired Evan from a distance. At 32, Evan was the creative director at Vantage Studio, a rising ad agency where Jasper had landed his first real job. Evan was sharp, charismatic, with dark hair cropped close and a smile that could disarm anyone. But he was also Jasper's boss, untouchable, a man who seemed to glide through life while Jasper stumbled. They'd barely spoken outside of meetings, yet here Evan was, offering a ride as a favor on a night when Jasper's world felt like it was unraveling. "Get in before you drown," Evan called, leaning across the passenger seat. His voice was warm, teasing, but his eyes held something deeper. Concern, maybe? Jasper hesitated, then slid into the car, the leather seat cold against his wet clothes. The air inside smelled of cedar and rain, and Evan's presence filled the space like a pulse. "Thanks," Jasper muttered, pushing his fogged-up glasses up his nose. "I didn't expect this." Evan chuckled, easing the car into traffic. "What, me playing knight in shining armor? You looked like you needed one." Jasper's laugh was shaky. He'd been at a disastrous blind date, set up by his well-meaning but clueless friend, Mia. The guy had been rude, dismissive, and left Jasper at the bar with the tab. Worse, his phone had died, and the rain had turned his walk home into a nightmare. Evan's call, out of the blue, offering to pick him up after Mia tipped him off, felt like a miracle. But miracles, Jasper knew, always came with a catch. As they drove, the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows. Evan asked about the date, his tone light but curious. Jasper, usually guarded, found himself spilling the details. The guy's arrogance, the awkward silences, the sting of feeling invisible. Evan listened, really listened, his eyes flicking from the road to Jasper with an intensity that made Jasper's chest tighten. "You deserve better than that," Evan said quietly, pulling into a parking lot. Jasper realized they weren't at his apartment, but at a small, upscale restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of the city. The sign read Lumina, glowing softly against the brick facade. "I thought you were taking me home," Jasper said, confused. Evan grinned, a little sheepish. "You're soaked, starving, and probably freezing. Let me buy you dinner. Call it a boss's prerogative." Jasper's heart skipped. This wasn't just a favor anymore. It felt like something else, something dangerous. He followed Evan inside, the warmth of the restaurant wrapping around him like a promise. The space was intimate, with exposed brick walls and candles flickering on every table. They were seated in a corner booth, and Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that every glance from Evan carried weight. Over plates of roasted duck and glasses of red wine, the conversation shifted from work to something personal. Evan shared stories of his own. Growing up in a small Midwest town, coming out at 19, the struggle to prove himself in a cutthroat industry. Jasper, usually shy, found himself opening up about his own fears. Being the only openly gay kid in his rural Oregon high school, the pressure to fit in a world that often felt too big. "You don't give yourself enough credit," Evan said, leaning forward. His hand rested on the table, inches from Jasper's. "You're talented, Jasper, and you've got this quiet strength. It's rare." Jasper's face warmed. He wanted to brush it off, to laugh and change the subject, but Evan's gaze held him. For the first time, he felt seen, not as the awkward designer who overthought everything, but as someone who mattered. The air between them crackled, and when Evan's fingers brushed his, it wasn't an accident. The moment lingered, fragile and electric, until the waiter interrupted with the check. Jasper's heart was racing, his mind a mess of questions. Was this real? Was Evan just being kind? And why did it feel like the world had tilted off its axis? As they left Lumina, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glossy and quiet. Evan walked Jasper to his apartment, their shoulders brushing as they navigated the narrow sidewalk. At the door, Jasper turned, ready to thank him and retreat, but Evan stepped closer. "Tonight wasn't just a favor," Evan said, his voice low. "I wanted to spend time with you." Jasper froze, his breath catching. Before he could respond, Evan's hand grazed his cheek, and then they were kissing, soft at first, then urgent, like they'd both been holding back for too long. The world fell away, leaving only the warmth of Evan's lips and the thud of Jasper's heart. When they pulled apart, Evan's eyes were bright, searching. "I don't know what this means," he admitted, "but I want to find out. If you do." Jasper nodded, unable to speak. As Evan walked away, Jasper stood in the doorway, the night air cool against his skin. He knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, Jasper woke with the taste of Evan's kiss still lingering, a ghost of a moment that felt too vivid to be real. He stared at his ceiling, the Portland skyline peeking through his window, and replayed every second of the night before. His boss, had kissed him, and now the world felt like a tightrope he wasn't sure he could walk. At Vantage Studio, the office buzzed with its usual chaos. Phones ringing, designers arguing over color palettes, the coffee machine hissing like it was about to explode. Jasper slid into his cubicle, hoping to blend into the background, but his nerves were electric. Every time Evan's office door opened, his heart lurched. Evan, however, was all business. He strode into the morning briefing with his usual confidence, outlining the campaign for a new eco-friendly brand. Jasper watched him, searching for a sign. Any sign that last night wasn't a fluke. But Evan's eyes didn't linger on him. His voice didn't soften. By noon, Jasper was convinced he'd imagined the whole thing. Then, a Slack message pinged. "Meet me in my office. 2 p.m. Jasper's stomach flipped. He spent the next hour overanalyzing the message, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, designing nothing. When he finally knocked on Evan's door, his palms were sweaty, his glasses slipping down his nose. "Come in," Evan called, his voice steady but warm. He was leaning against his desk, sleeves rolled up, a stack of mock-ups spread out behind him. The door clicked shut, and the room felt too small. "About last night," Evan started, then paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't want you to think I'm that guy, the boss who crosses lines. I meant what I said, Jasper. I want to know you, really know you." Jasper's throat tightened. "You're my boss. It's complicated." "I know," Evan said, stepping closer. "But I've spent years playing it safe, keeping people at arm's length. I don't want to do that with you." The honesty in his voice cracked something open in Jasper. He wanted to believe it, to lean into this impossible thing, but fear clawed at him. What if this ruined his career? What if Evan changed his mind? Before he could spiral further, Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "It's Claire," he said, referring to the agency's COO. "She's been watching me like a hawk lately. We need to be careful." Jasper nodded, the weight of reality settling in. They agreed to keep things quiet, to figure out what this was away from the office's prying eyes. But as Jasper left Evan's office, he caught Claire's sharp gaze from across the hall. She was a formidable woman, mid-40s, with a reputation for sniffing out office drama. Jasper's stomach sank. Over the next week, stolen moments became their secret language. A brush of hands in the break room, a lingering look during a meeting, a late-night text that made Jasper's heart race. They met outside work, too, at a quiet bookstore in the Pearl District, a dive bar in southeast Portland where no one from the agency would spot them. Each moment felt like a rebellion, a fragile bubble they were both desperate to protect. But the bubble wasn't airtight. Mia, Jasper's friend and the office's resident gossip, started asking questions. "You're glowing," she said one day over lunch, her eyes narrowing. "Spill. Who's the guy?" Jasper deflected, but Mia wasn't fooled. She knew him too well, and her curiosity was relentless. Worse, Claire's scrutiny intensified. She started assigning Jasper extra projects, keeping him late, as if testing his loyalty. Evan noticed, too, and his frustration was palpable. One night, at a tiny jazz club tucked into an alley, Evan pulled Jasper close during a slow song. The music was soft, the crowd a blur, and for a moment, they were just two people, not boss and employee. "I hate hiding this," Evan murmured against Jasper's ear. "You deserve more than sneaking around." Jasper's heart ached. He wanted more too, but the risks loomed large. "What if we get caught?" he asked. "What happens to us? To my job?" Evan's grip tightened. "I won't let that happen. I promise." But promises, Jasper knew, were fragile things. As they left the club, a familiar figure stood across the street, watching. Claire. Her expression was unreadable, but the chill in Jasper's bones told him everything he needed to know. Trouble was coming. The air in Vantage Studio grew heavier by the day, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Jasper felt Claire's eyes on him constantly, her questions about his work laced with suspicion. Evan, meanwhile, was caught in a tug-of-war between his role as creative director and his feelings for Jasper. The tension was suffocating, but neither could pull away. One afternoon, Evan called Jasper into a closed-door meeting under the guise of discussing a client pitch. The moment the door shut, Evan's professional facade dropped. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice raw. "This is driving me crazy." Jasper's heart pounded. "Me too. But Claire, she knows something. I can feel it." Evan's face darkened. "She's been on my case about professional boundaries for weeks. I think she saw us at the jazz club." Panic surged through Jasper. "What do we do?" "We keep our heads down," Evan said, though his eyes betrayed his frustration. "And we figure out how to make this work." But keeping their heads down proved impossible. The agency was under pressure to land a major client, a tech giant called Nexlify, and Evan was spearheading the campaign. Jasper was pulled in to design the visuals, working late nights alongside Evan. The long hours blurred the lines between professional and personal, their connection deepening with every shared laugh, every quiet moment in the empty office. One night, as they pored over mock-ups at midnight, Evan pushed his chair back and looked at Jasper. "If this campaign lands, it could change everything for the agency." "For us?" Jasper frowned. "What do you mean? For us?" Evan hesitated, then leaned forward. "I've been thinking about starting my own firm. Smaller, more creative freedom. If Nexlify signs, I'd have the capital. And I want you with me. Not just as a designer, but as a partner." Jasper's breath caught. It was a dream, working side by side with Evan, building something together. But it was also a risk. Leaving Vantage meant leaving stability, and if Claire suspected anything, she could make things ugly. Before Jasper could respond, the office door swung open. Claire stood there, her arms crossed. "Working late again?" she asked, her tone icy. "You two seem awfully close." Evan stood, his voice calm but firm. "We're finalizing the Nexlify pitch. It's a big deal, Claire." She didn't buy it. "I'm watching you, Evan. Both of you." She left without another word, but the threat hung in the air. The next day, Mia cornered Jasper in the break room. "Okay, I know something's up," she said, her voice low. "You're sneaking around with Evan, aren't you?" Jasper's face burned. "Mia, please, don't say anything," she sighed, softening. "I won't, but you're playing with fire. Claire's out for blood, and she's not the only one who's noticed." Jasper's stomach churned. The office was a minefield now, every glance a potential explosion. But walking away from Evan wasn't an option. Not when every touch, every whispered word, felt like coming alive. That weekend, Evan invited Jasper to his apartment, a sleek loft in the heart of Portland's Arts District. It was the first time they'd been truly alone. No office walls or curious eyes. They cooked dinner together, laughing over spilled sauce and burnt garlic bread. As they sat on the couch, a movie playing in the background, Evan pulled Jasper close. "I've never felt like this," Evan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not with anyone." Jasper's heart swelled, but fear lingered. What if this crashes and burns? What if we lose everything? Evan cupped Jasper's face. "Then we rebuild. Together." They kissed, and for a moment the world felt conquerable. But as Jasper left that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out. Claire's shadow loomed, and the Nexlify pitch was days away. Everything was on the line. The Nexlify pitch was a high-stakes gamble, and the entire agency felt the pressure. Jasper's designs were the centerpiece, bold and innovative, while Evan's presentation was a masterclass in charisma. They worked in sync, their chemistry undeniable, but Claire's presence in the boardroom was a constant reminder of the line they were crossing. The pitch went flawlessly. The Nexlify execs were impressed, shaking hands and promising a decision soon. Jasper felt a surge of pride, but it was short-lived. As the team celebrated, Claire pulled Evan aside, her expression unreadable. Jasper watched from across the room, his stomach twisting. Later, Evan found Jasper in the hallway. "She knows," he said, his voice tight. "She didn't say it outright, but she's got proof. Texts, maybe, or someone saw us. She's threatening to take it to the board." Jasper's world tilted. "What does that mean?" "It means I could lose my job." And you, Evan's voice cracked. "I won't let them fire you, Jasper. I'll take the fall if I have to." "No," Jasper said, his voice fierce. "We're in this together." But together felt like a fantasy when Claire called them both into her office the next day. She sat behind her desk, a folder in front of her. "I've been watching you too," she said, her tone cold. "This relationship is a liability. Evan, you're the creative director. You should know better." Evan didn't flinch. "My personal life is none of your business, Claire." "It is when it affects the agency," she snapped. "And Jasper, you're talented, but you're replaceable. If this gets out, it's over for both of you." Jasper's blood ran cold. He'd worked too hard to lose everything now. But Evan's hand found his under the table, a silent promise. "I'll handle it," Evan said later, as they left Claire's office. "But we need to be ready for anything." The next few days were a blur of anxiety. Jasper threw himself into work, but every email, every meeting, felt like a trap. Mia tried to cheer him up, but even she couldn't shake his fear. Then, a miracle, Nexlify signed the contract. The agency erupted in celebration, and Evan was hailed as a hero. But Jasper saw the strain in his eyes, the weight of Claire's threat. That night, Evan took Jasper to the rooftop of his building, the city sprawling below them. The air was crisp, the stars faint against the city lights. "I'm not letting her win," Evan said, his voice fierce. "I've spent my life building walls, Jasper. You're the first person who's made me want to tear them down." Jasper's eyes stung. "I'm scared, Evan, but I'm not walking away." They kissed under the stars, a moment of defiance against the storm closing in. But the next morning, an email from Claire landed in Jasper's inbox. "We need to talk. Alone." Jasper's heart pounded as he entered Claire's office. She didn't look up from her desk, her fingers tapping a pen against a stack of papers. "Sit," she said, her voice clipped. He sat, bracing himself. "What's this about?" Claire's eyes met his, sharp and unyielding. "I'm giving you a choice, Jasper. End things with Evan or I go to the board. They'll fire him, and your career here is done." Jasper's chest tightened. "You can't do that. It's not fair." "Fair?" Claire laughed, bitter. "This is business. Evan's reckless and you're collateral damage. Walk away, and I'll make sure you keep your job." Jasper left her office in a daze, her ultimatum echoing in his mind. He wanted to tell Evan, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he avoided him, dodging texts and meetings, his fear swallowing him whole. Evan noticed. 2 days later, he cornered Jasper in the parking garage. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice raw. "You're shutting me out." Jasper broke, spilling everything. Claire's threat, his terror of losing everything. Evan's face hardened, but his touch was gentle as he pulled Jasper close. "We're not giving up," he said. "I have a plan." Evan's plan was bold. He'd resign before Claire could go to the board, using the Nexlify deal to launch his own firm. He wanted Jasper to join him to build something new together. It was a leap, but Jasper was done running from what he wanted. They confronted Claire together. Evan laid out his resignation, calm and resolute. "I'm starting my own agency," he said, "and Jasper's coming with me." Claire's face was a mask of fury, but she had no leverage. The Nexlify deal had cemented Evan's reputation, and Jasper's designs were already generating buzz. They walked out of her office, heads high, the weight of secrecy lifting. 6 months later, Caldwell and Klein Studio opened in a converted warehouse in Portland's Pearl District. It was small, scrappy, but Jasper's designs hung on the walls, and Evan's vision drove every project. They were partners in every sense, their love no longer a secret but a strength. On their first anniversary, they returned to Lumina, the restaurant where it all began. Over candlelight, Evan took Jasper's hand. "You changed my life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'd risk it all again for you." Jasper smiled, his heart full. "You don't have to. We're already home." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, a testament to the courage it takes to love, to fight, to build something real. And as the city lights glowed outside, Jasper knew they'd face whatever came next, together.